And now I'd like to introduce today's presenters. Michael Jansen is Chief Research Guru at Everest Group. As co-founder of our research practice, Michael offers profound insights and analysis to enterprises and service providers alike. He is particularly well known for his ability to hypothesize clever and challenging ideas based on his fact-based insights across business and IT processes, sourcing models, and industries. Rohit Agarwal is a practice director in Everest Group's global sourcing practice. In this role, he manages various research and advisory engagements and other key initiatives with shared services centers. He also leads the organization's research membership focused on shared services centers globally. Alok Singh is a senior analyst with Everest Group and has extensive working experience related to shared service growth strategy and locations optimization. Alok also directly advises Everest Group clients on their talent better practices, including building next-gen skills. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Michael. Michael, take it away.
All right. Hello, everybody. Michael Jansen here. Talent is a perpetual issue that we have been talking to enterprises and service providers alike over the last few decades, at least from my perspective. When I had the conversation with senior executives, it's really been one of the top two issues out there. And usually the conversations have revolved around, hey, I need to do something with my culture, and I need to do something with my talent. And usually the conversation around talent has been around, how do I get top talent in my organization? And as we're going to roll these slides forward, we're going to show you that the problem around talent has actually become much more structural in nature. And we're going to show you what organizations are doing about that challenge. So as we went into 2019, we asked a number of our clients on the enterprise side, what they said their top issues were. And what we've done is we presented those top three issues here. So they were adopting to new business models. So how do I deal with the next version of Amazon and the retail model? How do I deal with some of the fintechs, or how do I deal with some of the healthcare changing business models? Pricing and cost pressures was number two. So as we see rising wages, which is another part of the talent issue, we see tariffs becoming an issue. We see cost as potential challenge for us in 2019. But the number three issue on the list was talent and skills shortages. And so I'm going to roll forward here a couple slides showing you some unique statistics on that. So if we go to the next slide here, you'll see in the perspective of both the European Union and the United States that unemployment is hitting generational lows, especially in the U.S. And so what this means is that our economy is good, people are finding jobs, and the unemployment rate's quite low. But one of the statistics that I find very interesting on the next slide here is to talk about this in the context of a ratio here. And so what we're looking at here is the number of unemployed people in the U.S. versus the number of people looking for jobs. And if you go back to our last financial crisis back in the 2008 timeframe, you'll see on here that there were almost 700 people looking for every 100 jobs that are open. And if you look at the statistic now, we've completely flipped that matrix into an historical spectrum here, looking at only 90 people looking for every 100 jobs. And so when you start to think about that, what does that mean? That means there are more jobs out there than people looking for them. And what is that going to cause? So we saw one of those headlines yesterday in the various financial papers here in the U.S. Walmart introducing the concept of truck drivers now having their starting salary in the $87,000 range. And so if you think what that means, that's more than a college graduate makes. And they're gonna roll that kind of salary out to truck drivers. And I could go on and on about different, the minimum wage is de facto gone from $8 or so to almost $15, or is in the process of going to $15 for almost all industries. So those are going to be very, very impactful conversations in terms of the U.S. and European economies. If we go to the next slide here, what are those impacts that we're looking for? And so when we ask these same clients, what are those business challenges that are developing from the lack of talent? And the top three things they came back to us was it's hampering innovation, so it's preventing implementation of new ways of doing things. It's delaying project implementation because there are not enough people to do the current work and look for new ways of doing the work and implementing new projects. And it's adversely impacting customer service. And as I believe the structural challenge will become even more chronic over time, and there's some political backdrop to that, and as well as some demographic issues that are going to cause this to become even more chronic. So what we want to do on the next slide is start to talk about what this means in terms of your perspective. So what we got is a quick poll here. And if we can open that quick poll here, what we're going to ask you is, what is the most important talent issue for your company? Is it the shortage of next generation skills? Is it the regulation of global mobility of the workforce? So is there visa issues coming in play? Is change management? Is it a limited supply of entry level, or is it reduced capital technology investments? So let's look at what we're getting here. If you click on your answer. Okay, I'm starting to see votes come in here. Okay, and Rohit, what are you seeing here? You see those results, right? It's pretty much what our same answers we got in the analysis we're going to show you here.
That's true, Michael, and in a moment we'll get to the analysis, but I think broadly the point is that shortage of next generation skills and then limited supply of entry-level resources go a bit hand in hand. And what's truly emerging is that it's not the lack of workforce. And if you look at a global level in totality, it is the shortage of next generation skills which is really creating some issues, and we have the results. So we have 55% people voting to shortage of next generation skills. Change management is the second biggest, about 1/3, and then regulations which are impacting the global mobility of workforce, with few votes for limited supply of entry-level resources. If we move on to the next slide, and we look at, as Michael earlier told about, that we do this regular research to hear what our clients have to say about what are their key issues. When asked specifically about talent issues, this pretty much echoes what our participants are saying here. About 72% of them believe it is the shortage of next generation skills which is going to be a biggest problem. A similar number, 10% for global mobility workforce. Relatively fewer votes for change management. Believe the key difference that I've seen, or the key reason I've heard, is that companies believe that they can get around some of the issues provided they understand what these issues are in the first place. So the challenge is the lack of clarity on what the key issue is.
Yeah, and I think, Rohit, when I look at these results here, my overall analysis is we've almost got a tale of two different worlds here. So in the U.S. and European economies, you've got actually a shortage of raw talent. So you have a shortage of just not top talent, but you have a shortage of just arms and legs and people to occupy kind of the butts and seats mentality. In India and other low-cost locations, it's not a lack of bodies, but it's a lack of the right talent. And obviously, both of those things become a challenge for enterprises to get the resources they need. But it is a little bit of different perspective to think about the underlying cause of what we just saw on the previous page. So what we've done here is we've created what we call our Pinnacle model study here on talent strategies. And the goal with the Pinnacle study is to be able to understand cause and effect. And what you'll see on this is a number of dots, as each of those represent different shared services organizations. And what we've done is we've mapped those against the capabilities that the companies are reporting versus the outcomes they were seeing. And in a Pinnacle analysis, what you're looking for is a general plotting of the dots that go from the bottom left to the upper right. And I always look for the dot plot here, as you're seeing in front of you, as being really important, because what you don't want to see is dots in the upper left or dots in the bottom right. And so what that means is if you only have basic capabilities, you're only going to get basic level 1 outcomes or basic outcomes. If you do have advanced or leadership capabilities, you get much better outcomes, and you'll see that cause and effect relationship from lower left to upper right. And then what we do in the Pinnacle analysis is we're going to compare those folks that are in the upper right, those in the green shaded area, and we're going to show what they're doing versus what everybody else is doing. And so there's a number of dimensions here on the capability side, on the x-axis, and then the outcome here that we're going to walk through here. And so I'll leave that to Rohit to walk through the actual numbers here. But again, good cause and effect should be leads to a very good conversation about there is things you can do to get the results you're looking for. Rohit, you there?
So on this page, let's look at some of the key effects or outcomes that Pinnacle Shared Services organizations have achieved as a result of the capabilities they have built. And as we get down from effects to the causes, we'll try and drill down into the details and establish the correlation and find out which are the true practices which differentiate and enable these Pinnacle Shared Services to achieve better outcomes. We looked at the effect or impact from 3 perspectives in terms of cost, in terms of operational impact, and the business impact. If we look at the cost first, the story here is not truly about reducing the cost. Reduction in cost has been one of our derivative factors, but what companies have truly looked to do is to tweak their approach to be more effective and actually adopt a lot of unconventional ways of driving talent initiatives. We'll talk more about this unconventional ways as we get into the capability section. But what we have seen is that as many as Pinnacle organizations, as compared to others, have actually achieved to keep their HR costs less than 5% of the total shared services costs. And this has been due to some of these initiatives. On the operational impact side, the metrics are very clear. Pinnacle Shared Services have performed about 2 to 3 times better as compared to others on the key metrics in terms of how the talent practices have impacted their ability to improve performance on these metrics. We'll look into that on the next page. But before that, talking about business impact, it's very hard to actually attribute and quantify the business impact that the talent programs in an organization make. Talent is largely an enabling practice. They create the right ecosystem, they bring in the right resources, but how do you measure the business impact they make? We asked our participating companies about how do they feel in terms of their satisfaction of how are the talent programs aligned to the strategic and business outcomes that their organizations have. And not surprisingly, about 1.5 times higher ratings for Pinnacle Shared Services as compared to the others. Let's move on to the next page and start peeling this a bit further. Talking about the operational metrics, we looked at 3 of them: time to hire, time to productivity, and staff productivity. As you will clearly see in terms of the gap between the solid green bars and the solid blue bars, Pinnacle Shared Services delivered much higher impact through the talent practices on these metrics as compared to the others. There's clearly a 2 to 3x difference or even higher in some areas. If we move on to the next page, we're looking at some of the business impact created. So we decided to look a bit deeper into it, that which are the talent programs which are leading to this higher satisfaction and higher impact. We looked at these 4: performance management and rewards, talent acquisition, employee value proposition, and learning and development. And as you'll see, Pinnacle Shared Services have not made impact in only 1 or 2 areas, but across the board. It is how they have embedded some of these practices into their culture and across everything they do that has made a difference. For example, one of the shared services of a leading insurance company scrapped the values they had for the shared services and adopted the global values that the parent organization have. This was completely with the intent that they are not a different organization. Their goals and aspirations are same as that of the global parent organizations, and hence they need to work with the same values. This, and looking at the same outcome targets that the parent have, enables these Pinnacle Shared Services to actually align each of everything they do better to the parent's goals. Let's look at some of the capabilities that Michael talked about in our next section from here.
Okay, so if we go into this section here, I think we're going to do another quick poll. And the question we're going to ask before we go in to the next section is, how do you view your current role of your shared services organization in building the workforce of the future? So the first one's kind of a, hey, we're not doing much, no investments in building the workforce of the future. We are on-demand skill hiring initiatives. We are proactively identifying need for and building next generation skills, and we're an active partner. So we've got the poll open. Okay, I can see the results coming in here. The good news is everybody's doing some sort of investment. I don't see anybody not investing. That means people are feeling generally good about what they're doing. Okay, all right, we'll leave it open and close it in 5, 4. Okay, just closed it here and we'll see the results. All right, Rohit, do you want to comment about the answers here?
Not at all surprised by this, Michael, and pretty encouraged that all of the participants here are making some investments through their shared services. Also encouraging to see a healthy 20% organizations who are actively partnering in enterprises shared services. We have seen increasing intent of shared services to do that, but still not enough license to go behind it. It's the middle two categories where we see most of the shared services, and that's what this shows. Okay, if we move on to the next slide, reflecting on this, so how exactly are shared services actually building all these capabilities? When we did this research, we looked at, and then we did this entire assessment, we looked at 5 broad categories. We called strategy as one of the core capabilities, talent acquisition, talent development, performance management, employee value proposition, and then the technology capabilities. All of these behind the talent strategies and talent practices within a shared services. You will see a lot of boxes below these 5 categories, about 15 to 20 of them. If you really look at them, they're not unique. Almost all the shared services we talk to or we look at, they have in some ways each of these areas that they are looking into. But there are 2 important points to note here. First, it is how each of these has their unique role to play, and each of them stack up to together create an ecosystem that enables Pinnacle Shared Services do better. What we have done separately is that we have identified through this assessment 5 core capabilities, and those are the ones which are highlighted in dark green boxes versus the others which have more of a white or transparent box. These are the capabilities: skills gap mitigation, ecosystem partnership, L&D practices, employee engagement, and adoption of new technologies, where we have seen a very differentiated approach that has been taken by some of the shared services has really accelerated their ability and their journey to become more strategic to the parent organization, deliver better outcomes, and that has made all the difference. If we move on to the next page and we start looking at each of these 5 areas one by one, we look at what's being done differently in the talent strategy. Aspirationally, all shared services want to build a workforce which is relevant for future, but Pinnacle Shared Services have been more proactive in building the required strategy, and this is what has differentiated them. They have been very proactive and very specific in identifying areas which they should prioritize, where they should invest their money, and they have also identified high-performing talent on which they are betting on. What this has done is created strong outcomes, not only delivered strong outcomes, but created strong use cases to get both support from the top, right amount of time, fund, etc., and participation from their employees to actually go through this transformation. What other things that they have done is that they have had a very flexible approach to actually do things. They have not tied themselves down to what has traditionally worked and not worked, or been completely intent on transforming everything that they were doing. They've been very flexible, fail first, fail fast approach, implemented multiple things at small scale, and then established a broader digital orientation and this innovative approach to drive this change.
Moving on to the next capability that we have here on the next slide is about talent acquisition. So most companies that we have interacted with, this definitely seems to be a big pain point. So what Pinnacle Shared Services have done is adopted a more multi-pronged approach to talent acquisition. In fact, when you look at both Pinnacle and non-Pinnacle shared services, they have been diligent in adopting techniques like hiring from adjacent industries or alternative industries, also in their use of social media channels and so on. But what the Pinnacles have done different is, first of all, in terms of their partnerships with the educational institutions that they've been doing, and the very nature of these partnerships is very different. So some of the Pinnacle shared services that we've interacted with, they've gone to the extent of co-creating courses, adopted programs such as campus ambassador programs, organized hackathons and competitions in these college campuses, and this is slightly different from what other companies might be doing, such as internship programs only, right? So clearly there's a more broader strategy that these companies have for talent acquisition, and which is clearly working well for them, right? Also some of the Pinnacles have also used acqui-hiring, which is acquiring startup also. While this approach is not really scalable, this has definitely worked for some of the shared services organizations. Right? Moving on to the next capability that we have among the 5 capabilities that we had is L&D. Again, one of the more critical areas, and one of the areas that has been undergoing a lot of or a fundamental shift in the very nature of the L&D itself. Just the other day, I was reading about Infosys, one of the leading service providers, right? Reducing their classroom training from 8 hours to 8 hours from over 19 hours, and this change has happened in the last 3 years only, right? So while we're seeing that almost 90% of the trainings at Infosys have been reduced, and it has reduced to almost 40 to 50%, the shared services centers are not far behind. They're taking a cue from this as well, and in fact, the Pinnacle shared services have been very agile and nimble in terms of adopting some of the new age techniques such as gamification based learning. In fact, the adoption of such techniques, as you can see on the slide, is almost 2 times higher than the other shared services. In addition, through learning through peer-to-peer or employee-to-employee network has also been on the rise in some of these Pinnacle shared services centers. The best part about such L&D programs is that in terms of cost effectiveness, these are obviously low investment and high returns, as has been observed in many of the Pinnacles.
Yeah, guys, when I look at that one, I said, I want to laugh a little bit when I see gamification-based learning, and then I look at it and say, okay, well, if that's what's working, then that's a good, there's definitely that cause and effect relationship that we saw at the overall dot plot of the Pinnacle. So if it's working, then we should embrace it.
Exactly, Michael. And talking about other key success factors, right? On the next slide, what we've seen is in terms of employee value proposition and employer brand creation, what are companies doing? So in terms of the common perception among the firms as well as individuals is some of the key modes that people might be thinking about enhancing their employee value proposition or the brand is, say, things like team offsites, good health and wellness programs, recreational events, and then so on. Guess what? These are very important, but clearly these are not very differentiating because everyone is doing it. What our research suggests is that in terms of giving the employees a structured career path, especially when it comes to niche roles within your organizations, often works best. And in terms of retention, this has been seen as a, as Michael was talking about cause and effect, this has been seen as one of the bigger factors when it comes to retention and also engaging the employees internally within the organization. Also, what we've seen is in terms of the Pinnacle Shared Services, they've been reasonably proactive in terms of their performance management, and the 360-degree appraisal has been something that has been widely used among the Pinnacle Shared Services. All in all, this has been bundled together as a very effective way to attract and even retain the top talent or the highly skilled talent, as we put it. Coming to the last among the 5 capabilities is technology. So clearly, although it's the last, it's in my opinion, one of the more critical capabilities, because it's an enabler of your strategy when it comes to not only the HR but also your business operations. Right? So in terms of the adoption of technology within HR, what we have seen is companies systematically invest in next generation technologies, things like AI, RPA, and then a significant spend has been done within the Pinnacle Shared Services for these next gen technologies. In most cases, it's been over 20% of the overall HR budget as well. Right? What this has done is, and even adoption of cloud-based systems, is that these have enabled the shared services centers to streamline tasks, improve agility, and provide a much deeper level of insights at a lower cost than they would otherwise do.
Okay, thank you, Alok. I think we're going to now move into the more conversational part, but we want to do a quick poll first. And so as I look at all these things, I get excited when I see quantification of what's working. We wanted to ask you the question of, with regards to these capabilities, where do you see the biggest gap? So we're going to open the quick poll here. Do you see that biggest gap in your shared services organization? Is talent strategy? Is it talent acquisition? Is it talent development? Is it performance management, or is it the technology? Got a horse race here. And it's a changing horse race. It's going to be okay, we'll keep it open for another few seconds here. It's a very evenly distributed population here of answers. And we got one pulling ahead at the end here. All right, so let's close it in 5 seconds here. We just closed it, and as we see the answers here, you got one that's clearly pulling ahead here. The biggest gap being the performance management and the employee value proposition. So, but with all the others, almost equal in nature. So that performance management's one sticking out there from this audience.
I think that probably, Michael, that's probably a great way to move into our next section as well, where we have some mantras for companies to become a truly differentiated employer, right? And then when we talk about these mantras, they're actually related to the capabilities that we have identified and specific pain points for these companies. So let's move into that. And the first one that we have here seems a bit counterintuitive, Rohit. Success is dictated by not only the amount of investments in L&D, but the specific investment areas. What would that mean?
That's such an interesting point, Alok. So, and it sounds counterintuitive, but if you really look at it, what we observed is that is the amount of investments that some shared services are making really, leading to outcomes? Not really always, but in the specific investment areas where they are putting their money has made a huge difference. So the practices that some of these companies have adopted are not unique and not really new all the time, but it's how they have used some of these unconventional means very creatively, very constructively, and systematically that has created an impact. I'll talk about a shared services center I recently visited. It's based in India. It's a technology center for a large US-based technology company. And what they have done is they have created an L&D program for not just the shared services in India or rest parts of the world, but for the entire global organization. and they have achieved significant penetration. Like they have 80 to 90% people in the shared services using that L&D platform, massive online learning courses, and they have a significant about 10-15% of the global workforce now signing on to that platform and really using it. And this is really transformed in terms of time and effort and money that they save in traditional learning, but also the relevant courses that their employees are learning and the effectiveness of this learning.
Interesting, Rohit. I guess that's an interesting example, but the only point that comes to my mind is how do you get the buy-in for such kind of enterprise-wide initiatives? Also, I'm assuming there'll be a big budget requirement for such initiatives. How do you get that?
So see, sometimes all it takes is breaking free from what traditionally has worked for you or what you think is the only way to do things. For example, what this shared services did is that they realized that having a large scale funding for this initiative might not be possible. So they crowdsourced the fund. The entire HR, different departments got together, squeezed in little funds from different initiatives that have not really performed well over the last few years, put that together and did a pilot for this platform. Now, they thought that having a very cool, very innovative platform, technology platform, will be the key to success. But again, that needed money. What they did instead is that they used the arbitrage advantage in India, and they hired a couple of resources to actually man this, do a bit of it. So people, when they go onto the internal website, they feel it's a portal taking their requests, but actually there are two people at the back end processing all the requests, giving them access to online courses and all the other details. And once for the 6 months, 9 months time period this worked, they had about thousands of employees doing tens of thousands of courses. They knew this is working and the results were out there. That is when they went to the parent organization, they went to the senior stakeholders, got the budget, got the technology, and now this is a successful case study. If you really think about it, this is basically about changing your approach towards things, changing the culture, and this happens to be our next mantra.
So exactly, I mean, in terms of innovation, we see what works best for most shared services centers or even enterprises is building a culture of innovation and going forward with the experimentation mindset. Right? So what really needs to be done by these shared services is inculcating a belief of innovation and a culture of innovation. This can be done through multiple things such as periodic innovation events, dedicated programs, and so on. To that extent, one of the shared services centers has even created an innovation garage.
So I know what I do in my garage, Alok. What do you do in an innovation garage?
So that's a good one, Rohit. So in terms of the innovation garage, what the shared services center has done is allocated some space within their organization and laced it with all these cool gadgets, the IoT devices, the drones, the 3D printers, and so on. And how this encourages people is to come together and solve problems in terms of they build new devices, get new ideas. But at the end of the day, how this helps is when people come together in an informal setting, in more of a recreational setting, the thinking is often barrierless, right? So this is served as a great move to motivate the employees, and the company has even used this to engage with the employees in terms of they've asked the employees to bring their kids and even promoted competitions using that and done more peer-to-peer learning kind of events within that innovation garage.
That sounds pretty exciting way to learn things, and I believe some of the other cultural elements we have seen some successful or Pinnacle shared services have adopted are around flexible performance management metrics, more outcome-based metrics adopted there, very flexible employment models. But what is another important aspect is that all of these are beads in a bigger process. What binds them all together is agile and effective leadership. It's no fun or no use bringing about a change if you are too late to arrive. So if this is not led by example, if the leaders are not aligned to the goals, you will fail to get the best out of your workforce.
Exactly. Talking about the workforce, and then we can move to the next slide. What we have heard Pinnacle Shared Services is talk about prioritizing investments in high potential talent. What do you think about that?
That's a very, very important point, Alok. I think different things. We all need to believe that not everybody has the same skills or not everybody likes to do the same thing. So while shared services need to evolve their entire workforce, they need to really upskill, reskill them. What they need to understand, and some of the Pinnacle shared services have done that, is that some skills require a kind of talent and others or some services require different kind of skills. So some of these companies, they have really identified some areas which are most critical and where they need to change fast. And then, as I was talking about it earlier, they in the talent strategy section, they have identified which employees are their best bets. Of course, a fair bit of experimentation went into it, but this helped them creating successful use cases, some success stories early on. And also, this is a very effective way to retain your high performing talent, but also to encourage the rest of your workforce and really motivate them to come on board, because this transformation journey, this entire reskilling, upskilling, it's not easy. Everybody has to invest extra at becoming more or better than what they are. What this is create a culture of change. You know, it promotes this culture of transformation, and some of these successful examples are clear indicators that this works.
Hey, Rohit, this is one I have a lot of passion for. I know having led GBS and shared services from the U.S. side of the equation and managed large teams in India, for example. One time I was visiting the team, we were talking about our kicking off the year plans, and they were bringing me a fairly comprehensive plan to deal with some of the low performers in the organizations and what they were going to do to help them out. And I looked at it and I said, this is great. I want you to take all that investment that you're planning to spend on these and to not focus on the low performers, but take that same investment and focus on the high performers, because my strong feelings were that it would be I get much higher return on the overall investment by focusing on those that were already proven to be great performers, and if we could get those people to do even better, the overall organization would benefit.
True, absolutely agree with that. And then I think we don't want to say that focus on a few and leave the rest. What we're saying is that identifying what works best and make sure you are placing your money in the right area. For example, if I move on to the next page, what we're talking about is how do you make these talent practices, very successful for your broader workforce by instituting practices like talent rotation, career pathing, and upskilling, reskilling practices. And the problem, as we were looking at some of it earlier, is not the lack of talent, but the lack of right skills. And to learn the right skills, you need the right amount of participation and motivation among the broader workforce. If we look behind this, what we really identify is that this hesitance in participating, this hesitance in going through the change comes from the lack of clarity on what the future holds. Employees do not really understand why they need to go through this change. Alok, what do you think Pinnacle Shared Services have done to really motivate and engage their employees?
So, Rohit, great points. I think when you talk about some of the initiatives such as talent rotation, career pathing, upskilling, reskilling, so we see all kinds of shared services, whether Pinnacle or not, talking about having these initiatives. But what they really need to go back and ask themselves is, are they being programmatic about these? Are they being proactive about this? I think this is one of the key factors that has really worked well for the Pinnacle Shared Services, being programmatic about some of these initiatives. And then to take an example, right, in terms of talent rotation, why it might seem like a simple thing, but why it's important for people is, if you talk about talent rotation, it's not only about rotating talent across geographies. There can be rotation between the businesses, which obviously give best practices across the organizations and across practices. So this has been done more programmatically. Similarly for upskilling, reskilling, across different areas, whether it be technology or business process, the Pinnacle Shared Services have achieved much higher success rates in these initiatives, and by being programmatic and also driving more engagement by making these activities more fun in terms of learning and development. We talked earlier about gamification, so things like these have really worked well for such organizations.
And I think as we talk about some of these things like gamification, etc., one of the biggest worries we have seen is to, this man versus robot. Enough is being said on the mainstream media about this, so I'm not going to get into all of that. No doomsday theories here, but what employees need to be really made to understand is that technology, if used constructively, can help them do better. It's not here to replace their jobs. Only the skills required are getting replaced, but the jobs will still exist. Now,
exactly.
Next page and look at how technology companies have done this.
Yeah. So exactly, Rohit, when you say it's not man versus machine, it's human plus machine. So that, in my opinion, is the right way to put it. And as you said, application of technology is much broader. And at the end of it, if you think about it, the technology is actually arming people to do more. And even within the HR organizations, there are examples of successful shared services or the pinnacles who have achieved more by using technology and in a smart way. One example that comes to my mind is in terms of usage of AI in hiring, and I think many of you on the call might have heard this as well. So one of the companies has used an AI-based tool for recruitment for more targeting and identification of shortlisting of candidates. So how this has helped is cast a wider net in terms of the talent pool. It can now tap into talent pool which historically they could not, just due to the lesser number of resources. And at the end of it, this has not really only helped them save on costs, but they've also improved on metrics such as time to hire for most roles. And in fact, the reduction in time to hire has been as high as 50 to 70% in some cases.
Wow. I'm always excited and amazed to hear examples of technology being used in such small but effective means. Also, the entire human plus tech argument is something I believe we truly need to be more vocal about. But to be able to implement technology and truly achieve that human plus bot workforce ecosystem, I believe two things are there that also a clear understanding helps. Is that one, hiring digital skills is not enough. It's not only about certain areas of work or certain jobs where you need people who have these technology skills, these digital skills. The point here is about having a more of a digitally oriented organization. And the second point, you cannot have a digitally oriented organization unless you have digitally oriented workforce. So the key here is to make sure that right from the word go, most of the things that happen in your organizations, if not all, are done digitally to the extent possible. And I'm not talking about the core processes or the core services that are being delivered. Let's talk about how's the record keeping, how's the timekeeping, how's the attendance, how do people apply for the cabs they need, how do people look at some of their financial data, how's your HRIS interacting with people, how do people interact with each other, how do people raise requests and use some of these services. If all of that becomes more digital, people are by default, in their DNA, they're adopting this approach to think more digitally and thinking about technology at making them more efficient. Like one of the events I was attending, there was somebody on the stage and he was asked that, what is your idea of the future? And again, it's more of a aspiration which will largely remain unfilled. But the idea was if the person could be sipping his pina coladas, lying on a beach with technology doing all the work. We are far away from that, but where we can get it is working very efficiently with technology, and HR departments need to really learn that.
Hey, Rohit, I like beaches, though.
Yeah, true. I suspect you to be that person, Michael. Anyhow, move on to the next page. Just summarizing the key takeaways here. What we're truly looking at is building a strong culture of innovation, having that mindset of digitally oriented workforce, using technology to drive these key differences, and don't let the traditional approaches tie you down. Break free, try new things, fail fast, and then accordingly keep reinventing. Michael, do you want to take on?
Yeah, so those are good conversations. I think, go back to, it's not one of these things that's going to make the ultimate difference in a high performing organization. It's going to be multitudes of these, and maybe not every one of them, but it's adding these in aggregate. There's a lot of good information here to think about, and to take back to your organizations and see which ones of these things make sense for you. To me, I look at them and say, very, very high value in terms of the return potential. So we're going to open it up to questions and answers here. We've got a way to do that on the next slide. Yes, so you can access the question panel there on the panel and ask that. Let me start with a few that have already come in here. I made reference to U.S., almost a tale of two worlds, with the U.S. having a pure shortage of workers, causing inflation and salaries, causing organizations to be very creative about how they're going to attract the talent or retain the talent. But then I also made reference to India being a very different conversation. It's more about how do I get the right talent and how do I upskill and reskill the talent I have right now, so we can focus those. It's not that we don't have enough bodies. We just need to have them doing the right things. But the question was, what about Costa Rica? What about Warsaw? What are the challenges in some of these other locations? And I don't know, Rohit, do you want to take a quick try on that one?
Right. So I would say, the problems are slightly different in different areas and different locations. So locations like Costa Rica, or if you look at Poland and other locations in the Central Eastern Europe, still have a decent sizable talent supply. However, in some of these areas, in some of these countries, the overall fresh supply of talent is slowing down. So they are not there where US is, some of the data you shared earlier, Michael, but they are not sitting on as vast base of talent as India. But I believe reskilling, upskilling, and some of these practices are applicable. So as you said, it's not about going after each of the things, but adjusting what is required more in which geography or which organization.
Yeah, I look at each of these different locations having different assets to bring to bear. Some of them are geography, some are language, some are unique skill sets, accents, and stuff like that. But none of them have the scale of India, and I think each of those are subject to kind of a finite pool of labor. So we have a lot of good research on that. I'd encourage, if you have specific questions about specific locations, we can give you very in-depth analysis of each of those locations and give you the current situation and kind of read out on the particular opportunities and challenges region by region, city by city almost. Another question here is around, and look, I'll ask you this. Though we use abbreviation of MOOCs, Moocs. Can you give me the definition of that and maybe some examples? What is a Mooc?
So Moocs are massive open online courses, are online learning platforms, which is mainly aggregation of online content over the internet, right? So there are massive. So these courses, there are certain examples that I can point out, things like Udacity, then there is Coursera, and there is edX, and so on. Plus, some of these companies have taken corporate licenses for some of these Moocs platforms to enhance the learning of the workforce. So you don't have to build a Moocs or massive open online course platform. You can just take a license from one of these providers and then leverage it for your needs.
All right, that sounds.
So Michael, just adding something interesting I've seen here in India is that NASSCOM actually took on a big initiative called the Talent Skills Initiative, and they created a huge government-backed industry-sponsored platform to allow the entire IT BPS workforce to be able to learn new things. And what they are now doing is that instead of having all the curated courses and all the dedicated academies, they're actually allowing access to a lot of these Moocs or these open online course platforms, which can be accessed through the NASSCOM portal. So what we're really looking at is there is a lot of value in this. The content is out there. There's no scarcity of that. It's just about people finding the right time and the right content, and then you're kind of then bridging that gap.
Okay, another question here. Do you suggest these strategies are more applicable to IT than BPO? What's your guys' sense on that?
Not really. So I would say, again, as you said, every area of work has their own specific challenges or requirements. So in IT, in fact, I would say IT workforce is traditionally more used to, kind of continuous learning, reskilling process, because the technology keeps on changing every few years and they have to upgrade themselves. So there, it's more about that the pace of this change has completely increased, and hence they're requiring to do that more often. But also, the entire business context is blending into technology, is required to learn not just about technology, but also about how do people think, clients work, how does the business work, what is profitable, and hence working on those kind of things. Business process services, BPS, this is more focused on working closely with technology and learning how to do that. Of course, as a lot of transactional work gets automated, people need to learn more about more judgment intensive work, and that means upping up the game in each of their domain areas, become more of the domain experts, more expertise in each of the areas. So the learning for BPS is more into that areas.
Okay, and I would agree. I don't think it's the subject matter. I think it's more the approach. So IT versus BPO. I look at that as being kind of a neutral in terms of these strategies. I think it applies to all. All right, here's one. Can shared services centers become a profit center? I'm not sure that's really geared toward the talent question, but I will give a direct answer on that one. It can happen, but it requires a very set of unique circumstances. And in general, the requirement to become a profit center requires a whole different set of skills and requires a whole set of different investments. And I would not encourage that kind of thinking unless you have strong support from your corporate side of the equation, and you have something truly unique. So the ones we saw where we saw some of these shared services becoming profit centers were unique because they were first in country or first at scale in a certain region or certain industry that one of the BPO providers were interested in buying them down the road. There are examples of it, but I've seen more examples of failures on this than anything else. Another question here.
So Michael, on the previous question, one interesting aspect is that if you look at it slightly broadly, more than the profit centers, a lot of shared services are actually stepping up to become growth centers, which is more around driving sales and better customer experience, which will eventually translate into profit. We have lots of examples there. So if anybody there is interested, they can reach out to us and we'll be happy to discuss more on that.
Yeah, so I think that's right. I think if we can help focus in on the business outcomes and look at driving profits in that way, and the business outcomes, that's exactly what the enterprise is looking for, because you want to become part of the overall business strategy, not become a separate business strategy. That's what I was trying to indicate. You're not looking for an independent business strategy. Okay, here's one here. For many programs running to create culture of create a culture of innovation. What is being done for moving beyond ideas to proof of concept testing, implementation, any funding hacks for idea POCs?
So in terms of innovation, I think the way companies are approaching this is rewarding and even tracking some of these initiatives, right? So we've seen all the time that you might be doing hackathons, you might be doing periodic innovation events, but you really have to track what is actually coming out of these. Depending on the industry that you operate in, it could be anything, say from patent to any of the other research items that comes out of it, or even a product. So and there are specific rewards associated with each of these. So I think, as I said, there's no one size fit all for this kind of for driving innovation, but there are different things that have worked for multiple shared services.
Yeah, and I'll just add that somebody, it was also asked about funding hacks, and this is where the entire innovation or trying new things in shared services, the buck stops here. It's just like, where's the money? How do we do this? So there are multiple ways to do that. You can reuse some of the, you know, additional billing amount that the shared services happen to have some surplus at times. There is a dedicated GIC fund that they can use into, but we have seen mostly what works is that try and get some seed funding from some backers, and then have a POC, which can then be taken at a larger scale. But demonstration of outcomes is always the best way to secure additional funds.
Okay, all right. So I think that wraps up our question and answer. Certainly you can reach out to talk to us. Our names are on the slide there. I encourage you to check out our blogs. So there's the everestgroup.com blog. You can also look at our search for our research, and there's lots and lots and lots of content out there on all of these topics. So I encourage you to do that. And of course, we've got capabilities if you're interested in going deeper with us on our in-house, our membership, and our membership really focuses in on the insights and data. It's access to our expertise and access to peer comparisons. So of course, we can help you in many different ways. And so we thank you for your time today. And I think at this point, we'll conclude the call.
Well, thank you. And thank you again, Michael and Rohit and Alok. And thank you for everyone for attending today's webinar. Again, you'll receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to download the presentation slides along with an on-demand playback of today's live session. And on behalf of Everest Group and our presenters, thanks for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.